Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today to learn about the safety application of wearable technologies. My name is Emily Whitcomb, and I'm the director of the Work to Zero initiative at the National Safety Council, and I'll be your moderator for today. So in this session, we will have a moderated discussion with our panelists on their use of wearable technologies for workplace safety. And at the end of our moderated discussion, I'm going to share some tools and resources that Work to Zero is creating to help make innovation more accessible for our employers. And we'll also have some time at the end for Q&A, so make sure you submit any questions or comments for us to tackle at the end. I'm very excited today to be joined by two very close partners of the Council and Work to Zero, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Aamer, do you want to take first shot at this?
Thank you, Emily. So excited to be here and so excited to be back, actually. So we were here last year as well, and I'm so glad that we are back here to discuss what we are doing. Yeah, so myself, Aamer Shamim, I'm the Director for Global EHS&S for AES Corporation. In the business for last 22 years, in oil and gas and now electrical power generation with AES since last 16 years now. My role as a global EHS&S director, the key is to ensure all these processes, and importantly these days, and we are going through a very critical transformation, I would say at this particular moment. We call it as smart safety transformation into the digital world, where we say that the world has to really end up with getting all these technologies in. So last 5 years have been very exciting within AES, getting these transformations, and we'll talk more about it. So myself managing the whole corporate EHS&S team, and we've got a subsection in there, a digital team that works towards achieving this goal. So coming from an engineering background, I'm a mechanical engineer, master's with environmental engineering. So yeah, so really excited to be here and share all our experience here.
Yes, thank you, Aamer. We're excited to have you. And Greg.
Yes, good morning, Emily and Aamer. My name is Greg Garrett. I'm a senior systems engineer at the Boeing company, specifically focused in ergonomics and human factors. I've been working in the immersive systems area for the last several years for Boeing, and basically I'm the enterprise safety subject matter expert, for safe and ergonomic deployment of immersive systems. I also have a side job where I do some mentoring, teaching at Virginia Tech as a professor of practice there, primarily working with students in areas of cyber physical systems, where we look at how we can deploy immersives along with other types of technologies, such as exoskeletons, sensors, drones, from a safety perspective, and addressing some of the real world problems that we are experiencing, not only at our company, but some of our other industry partners as well.
Thank you, Greg. Really excited to have both of you here today. And as Aamer mentioned, we were here last year talking about both of your use of wearable technology. So really excited to get any updates on that or see how those programs are going. But before we get into our moderated discussion, I just wanted to talk a bit about why this topic is so important. We've come a long way in our safety approach, and there's still some room for improvement. We have over 5,000 people that are still losing their lives on the job every year. And there are technologies on the market today that can reduce or even eliminate workplace fatalities. So for most of us here, safety really is the priority. But there are other benefits to adopting technologies with safety applications. So I wanted to share a few studies with our audience. A recent publication by Accenture stated that through the adoption of technologies, companies could generate improvements such as recordable incident rate reductions of 20% or more from today's levels. But not only can technology improve health and safety, it also increases operational efficiencies. So ERM interviewed 273 of the world's most well-informed EHS leaders, and they found that 92% felt their investments in data and technology met or even exceeded their expectations. And these EHS leaders indicated that technology was a top 3 priority for their investment. Technology really is the future of work, but unfortunately, adoption of that technology has been a little bit slow, especially for tech with safety application. So in our session today, our panelists are going to discuss their use of technology for worker safety. And then, as I mentioned at the end of this discussion, I'll share some resources for those who may be interested in getting started or just looking for extra info to help with their innovation journey. So with that, I'm going to kick us over to our moderated discussion here. And Aamer, I'm going to have you go first. And I'd love if you could share any case studies or examples of how you have used wearable technologies for workplace safety.
Yeah, sure, Emily. And then, as I said, great topic. And you just mentioned, 5,000 people, unfortunately, losing their life every year. That's sad, pity, and I would say a shame as well when we have all these technologies available. And I'm looking forward to a day where we can send each and every one back to their loved ones safe every day, 365 days a year. Yeah, so we are using a lot of, wearables and one of the common variables that people have normally been using, in the confined space, those monitors and all those other things. But today, what I want to share with you again, like we are talking about the real data, real statistics, real case studies. So one of the case study that we did in a project that we developed in El Salvador, which is one of our key market, in transmission and distribution. And AES as a company, we are working across in 16 countries, which we call as markets. So it's generation, transmission, distribution, and with our mission of cleaner and greener and supporting the spread of clean energy. So in El Salvador, what we did was in partnership with a researcher from Harvard Business Institute. So we said, okay, how can we use artificial intelligence to analyze data by using a wearable, a body cam in this case, which was worn by people while they were doing high-risk activities. So what we did was we picked up a high-risk activity over there, which was grounding in that case, and we wanted to explore how personalized analytics can, help safety. So we used 350 linemen and body cams were used to record their high-risk activity, which I said was grounding. So what we did was we selected them randomly over different experience and different age groups, and we wanted to see actually 3 things over there. What will be the impact of visual when person receives no feedback? So person sees or knows that he's being or she's being watched, and does evaluation of the own video afterwards. That's second. So once a person sees himself talking to him, doing his own task, so how does a person, can rectify? And then the third thing is when someone gets a feedback from a trainer, so how does that impact? So what we did was we measured time, taken and the safety violations before and after. So what we did was we said, okay, we'll see what's before and what's after, and the data was captured to do tasks along with the safety violations, the safety violations that they were doing. So we were counting that as count 1, count 2, count 3. And as per the pre-feedback, the raw before we did any feedback sessions with them, so we could see that the linemen were taking approximately from 25 minutes to 120, 25 to approximately 2 hours to finish the grounding activity, which was with a median of 65. So it was a bell curve, which was completely, spread out 25 to 120. While the spread of safety, so it was from 4 violations to 25, and with 18 being the median, and again it was a spread over there. So, and then what we did was we employed and we deployed these tactics, which when people were being, focused, were being monitored, they were watching their own video, and a trainer was giving them feedback as well. So once this was being done, what we observed was, very interesting. The first thing is the median, the safety median, so it moved and it came along to, 20. So So that is, it was getting towards a very good level and with low standard deviation. And interestingly, the efficiency improved as well. So the post feedback median, which was like 65 minutes for the task for being done. So it came from 65, so it came to 57 minutes. So not only the efficiency improved, but the safety point, the amount of work done better, but safer, so that both parameters improve, and that was, a good feedback or a good quantitative result for us, that the bell moved to the left, depicting efficiency. So this is, a real case study that we did, wearables, so how wearable can impact a performance of an individual plus the performance on the safety side as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Aamer. And the use of camera analytics and artificial intelligence is something that we're seeing becoming more and more popular. And I also want to mention, in some of the initial research that Work2Zero did, looking at potentially hazardous situations causing fatalities in the workplace, lack of proper training was found to be one of the top contributing factors. So in your study, you were able to watch the workers, see what they were doing unsafely, and then give them that feedback, which really enhances their training. And it's excellent that you had some data to share with us on that. So thank you. Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you could share with us the types of wearable technology that you all have been using over there at Boeing.
Sure. Thanks, Emily. We've been doing quite a bit of investment in a variety of different technologies. For example, augmented reality recently has been an area that we've been exploring, not only to impact, the worker safety, but also, as you mentioned earlier, some of the productivity and other benefits that also come along with implementing that from a safety perspective. A good example that we've had, very good win for us, was on the tanker program, the 767 program in Everett. We were experiencing some significant rework opportunities because of the significant amount of wiring that had to be done within the aircraft. And using the AR system, it provided them a better means to actually to perform and complete their work. So we increased our quality by like 98%. I mean, it was a huge number. But on the safety side aspect, we also significantly reduced the cognitive load that the mechanics were having to experience because they were having to memorize and learn and understand pages and pages and pages that they would have to reference back continually. And a lot of people I know haven't been in aircraft production, but those areas are fairly tight. And so you don't have room to lay out, a significant amount of drawings. And some of the drawings that the mechanics are having to follow could be, chained pages of about 7 or 8 in length. So that was a lot she had to measure out. So you can imagine if you're only folding it down to something that you can handle and then trying to find out where it is, in relationship to the work you're doing is significantly difficult. Exoskeletons has been an area also too over the last several years that we've been focusing on. And we're at a point now that we've been expanding and deploying upper body passive arrest systems or passive support systems in a variety of locations across our enterprise. And we're definitely seeing a lot of good feedback from the injury prevention standpoint. So those of you who may not be familiar with exoskeleton systems, the one I'm referring to, it's kind of like a backpack. It gives you arm support while you're doing work that's overhead. And it reduces the amount of strain that your shoulders are having to deal with while you're performing that job. So we've been going through a large deployment kickoff this year, and we'll be rolling it out into next year and identifying how those jobs in a variety of locations. So we are starting to see some impacts, to the workers for that. So that's been a big safety improvement. Sensors has been another area that we've been looking at, especially with COVID and biologic transfers and trying to stay 6 feet away from people. And so we have been doing some testing with smartwatch. Will warn the user if they're within a certain distance of a person or they've been in contact with them too closely for too long a period. So it provides them, feedback and warning. We were very careful in making sure that we were only warning the user. We weren't collecting data on their work scope and where they were going. So at first we had some privacy concerns from the mechanics of the shop floor, but once we explained we weren't collecting any data on them, we were just letting them know where they were in relationship to others. It was much more successful. And that same technology too, we're looking at how to leverage that into other opportunities. For example, confined space opportunities, and being able to alert somebody externally that something's going on with somebody who may be in a confined space location. So there's more, and we don't have all the time in the world to talk about it today, but those are just some of the key topic areas that we've really been focusing on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And a couple years ago, Greg came to our Work to Zero Summit and brought an exoskeleton to show off. And he was probably the most popular person at the conference because of that really cool technology. So thank you for that, Greg. Hopefully in the future, we get another chance to show off your exoskeleton.
Yeah, that'd be great. We look forward to it.
Yeah. So my next question for you all, I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the benefits of the use of technologies with safety application. Aamer, I'm going to have you start this one. I know you shared some of your what you have found as the benefits, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more or talk more in depth about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I can sure say, the exhibition. So I was there as well. So Greg was a popular person out there. His exoskeleton, was really cool stuff, and I'm so glad that he was there demonstrating it. So thank you again, Greg, and looking forward to see you again. Yeah. So talking on the measurable side, as I just said, our median on safety side, it moved from 18 to 20. This means more scores were being done. So that's a measurable thing. But one thing that we identified and we saw was there's much larger variation in both, safety and efficiency than perceived by managers. So measurement is important and key, so what gets measured gets improved. So that's one of the thing. And that was one of the key, I would say, the key take for us from this wearable that we said, and despite the wide belief that the safety traits of efficiency, so linemen who learn to be safer over time also become more efficient, and this was a kind of an eye opener for those linemen as well. And then another thing is results in safety may come later, so patience is key over there. So that's also one thing that we learned. And the other benefit, is, our impact measurement was directly linked with safety scores, so that the lineman was achieving. So it was very obvious and out there. They were well defined and consistent. So that's also very important, so you define and you get some quantitative results out there, because the bell chart that we used squeezed, so that really showed us, and then we got some unanticipated benefits as well, as I just mentioned, because for us we were able to break the myth that safety impacts efficiency. And I'll say that in the mind of a safety professional, there's never ever a confusion out there. However, there's always a discussion, especially at the middle and the lower management level, and our results clearly illustrated to them, and especially to those linemen who learn to be safer over time, become more efficient as well. And then at the end, I would say, persistence, patience, and consistency is the name of the game here, because you'll get all these technologies, you'll put them into pilot projects, and few would work, few won't work. So, but you have to be persistent. You have to know what you really want to achieve, and then you have to work slowly and gradually towards it. So those are the key, key takeaways from our study.
Thank you, Aamer. And I love your last point there. You know, when we talk to companies about how to get started in the space, we always remind them to think about what they're trying to solve for, and really make sure that they are building the business case before they start into a pilot project. And my next question in a minute, I'll pick your brain on some best practices. So Aamer, I think you have some good insight there. But Greg, I'd love if you could share any of the measurable results or what you all have found in using your technologies.
Sure. So from a productivity standpoint, with the use of exoskeletons, we found a significant increase in productivity, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25 to 30% for people who are actually using it. So going back to that future question we're going to have on business case, that's definitely one that that really makes a difference when we're actually talking to our operations folks about, we want to incorporate these. From a safety benefit, we have seen, a reduction in some of our reportable rates. It's been a little slow, and that's typically because with ergonomics types injuries, it usually has a much longer lead time before we actually start capturing some of those benefits of having implemented some system that's actually going to have an impact on those ergonomic reportable rates. So it takes a little while for us to start seeing those, but what we've seen so far has been very promising. So with immersives, for example, we've incorporated some additional programming. So meaning that when the mechanic may be using the immersive systems to perform their job, we've actually implemented a software that will capture any ergonomic postures, that they may be in, that are somewhat hazardous for them over a long period of time, or they may be doing a lot of repetitive motion and movement. And so it's capturing that and then providing feedback to the mechanic as they're doing that work, so that maybe we can help prevent any types of repetitive stress injuries over time. So that's been still a little bit more in development, but we have started implementing it in a variety of locations. One thing about immersives is that in the cases that we've used primarily, because it increases productivity, it significantly reduces the time the mechanic actually has interacting with the work or the product that they're building. So if they are in somewhat of a hazardous environment, or from a safety perspective, or they may be doing work that's highly repetitive, we've been able to reduce their exposure to that overall. So for example, there's one particular job from a faster installation process on one of our programs where it reduced the time spent from about 6 hours down to less than 1. So it was closer to 45 minutes. So you can imagine, that's a great productivity benefit, but also too, we've reduced their exposure, being in that environment. And on top of that, we've seen a much higher increase in quality. So first time pass quality, meaning that before we have individuals who may have performed work incorrectly, maybe they installed the fastener wrong. Well, when that happens, now you have to go and drill out the fastener, fix the hole, replace the fastener. So now you're being exposed to more repetitive work. So if you're increasing the quality first time, then again, less exposure, to those kind of more hazardous or repetitive stress injury opportunities.
Thank you, Greg. And that really goes back to what I said in my intro about those benefits of technology from a health and safety perspective, and reducing the exposure to those hazardous situations, but also increasing the operational efficiencies. So thank you for sharing that. My last moderated question for you all, I'd love if you could share some of your best practices or some of the challenges that you had to overcome, and any words of advice for the audience out here who may be looking to innovate their safety practices or looking to adopt wearable technologies. And Greg, I'm going to have you kick this question off.
So once you determine that the technology is something that you want to go out and implement, you really need to do a full review or assessment of the work scope or your production system if you're doing it in a production environment. You really need to understand, is your production system at a mature level to be able to accept integration of that particular technology, not only to ensure that you're implementing it safely, but also is it something that's going to be sustainable? So there's a lot of times that we've implemented, different types of technologies and didn't actually review that work environment to make sure that we could sustain it. And we've had a few misses. We've had some things where we've implemented and we come back later after a while and we find out, oh, they're not using it. Well, why aren't they using it? And so we had to really do a deep dive into the reasons behind it. Sometimes it was behavioral. Sometimes it was because we didn't set up the appropriate step processes in order for it to be sustainable. So making sure that you assess the maturity of your work area or where you're going to implement it before you go out and do it. And it's going to take some support. It's going to be more support, not just from the safety professionals, but it's going to be support from operations. It's going to be support from leadership. It's going to be support from finance. And this is something that I've kind of been working with the students of Virginia Tech on is understanding how it fits into the entire system. What impacts are going to occur? Because one thing you don't want to do is cause another issue or cause a safety problem or cause a production issue. Production guys won't like that if you go out and implement something and then you screw up their production system. So it's really looking at how does it fit, and trying to be aware that, if you're implementing something today, how do I maintain it? Do I need to have facilities come out and put in, new electrical, or where do I put my charging stations for immersive headsets? If there's software that I have to go buy, do I have a recurring cost yearly in order to maintain that? And what happens when we have updates? What do you do about training? So I know I'm throwing out a bunch of things, topics, but these are kind of the things that we've been putting together in kind of a playbook form. And I know Emily and I and the other members within the Campbell Institute are really looking at how we can pull this information together and then provide it out to safety professionals so that they can take this information and be able to kind of follow the step-by-step process and how they want to do that. So I think that's at least kind of good overview.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. And as you said, we've been working here at the council and we have some more work to do in this space. And you kind of perfectly queued up what I'll talk about at the end of our moderated discussion, which is some new resources from Work to Zero on digital readiness and how you can get your organization ready and aligned to really innovate safety practices and adopt these types of technologies. Aamer, I'd love to hear from you. Best practices, challenges, any words of advice for our audience members?
Yeah, Greg actually said it very nicely, all-inclusive process, so that's the key for success, whenever you're starting something new, especially bring new technology in, because you always have a workforce from different age group, the young guys would love it and would love to grab, and put their hands on it. And then you would have an aging workforce or a mid-level aging workforce that would be slightly hesitant. So you need to really get them on board, really, and tell them what exactly you're trying to achieve over here. Like in AES, we started using drone like more than 11 years ago. And I remember when we started using drones at that time, there were like questions being asked, like what those drones are gonna do for us. And then again, like I said, so some few things will come proactively. So this was kind of a proactive, and then few of the technologies will come reactively, and I'll talk about reactive things or technologies as well. So since the 11 years, we have used drones, and we have counted and we have accounted for, we have saved more than 100,000 hours of high-risk activity exposure, which has been avoided by using drones. And we have done a cost saving of more than 20 million US dollars. So we have done that, and now we are using drones extensively for various activities. And one of a very peculiar example, and I can give you, and this came as a reactive thought. So unfortunately, we had a fatality in Chile, and where a person was electrocuting electrocuted while doing a tree trimming operation close to a transmission line. So the person was close to the transmission line, was within the unsafe distance, and he was electrocuted. And that led us, to a thought that why can't we use drones? Why can't we use a drone that can do this tree trimming for us? And that started the whole process, where we work with the vendor, we work with the manufacturer to develop, and working slowly and gradually to develop a drone. So we said, okay, we want a tree trimming drone, and over the years, the drone that we have has developed in technology and amount of load it can cut. That's important, and because bringing back the load or bringing back the branches is the key as well. So it's not just a drone who's doing a trimming up there, and you're showering, and the drone is showering branches all over the place, which becomes another hazard of falling material. So we have now a drone that is a flying machine with two arms, one that can cut and the other that can bring those branches back to the operator. So an operator is operating a drone, sends it, that the drone arm cuts and brings that branch right back to his hand. So that's really cool. So that's something which we already have. And then we have like many other applications. Like one is the underwater manned drones that we are using in dam operations, inspections in Brazil. So in Brazil, we've got a very big network of dams over there, and we are using these drones to monitor, and do this kind of encatchment monitoring, contouring of the encatchment, and underwater diving drones who can go down there, inspect the dam, and all those kind of things. And one, very interesting thing that we do, because these boats that do the contouring of those dams and the encatchment areas of these, these are pretty decent unmanned boats. I'm talking about something like a 1.5 meter to 2 meter boats, so big boats. So what we do is we use drones to monitor drones, so these unmanned robotic boats are being monitored by drones. So when they go into an area, of course, when you send them in Brazil, Amazon, and you all can, visualize here. So they're going into blind spots. So you have a drone that is following these boats. So you're watching these boats via a drone. So they work as a team. So you have basically two unmanned vehicles or unmanned operations going on at the same time, and assisting and supporting each other. So that's something very interesting. And we've got a whole team over there that works on this, and there's a team that really makes this happen. Then unmanned robots, we are being used in boiler inspection. So that's also something that we are doing. So they can go inside a boiler and they can operate in the boiler walls. They can, climb up on these boiler walls, and then, of course, minimizing human exposure to heat, and also working in height as well. So that's also, one of the key over here. And then this cycling back to the challenges, like I said, when we introduced these drones, so the younger part of the workforce was so interested in becoming those operators of these drones, because for them it was such a fun, so just imagine 11 years before drones. So nowadays you can buy this off the shelf, the smaller ones, and kids also have this, but those days, these were really fancy stuff. So we had like lots of people who were interested in doing it, and we trained them, and we've got now certified drone operators. One of the challenges that we face, and we are still facing in few countries where flying a drone, flying these unmanned things is not allowed legally. So that's also something, so that's something that new companies who are planning to do this and who are globally structured or globally located have to look into this. What are the local legal regulations which can prohibit them from using these drones? So again, there has to be all the weight process, and as we said earlier, you really have to define what you want to achieve, and you have to be a step ahead. It should be a planned activity. So yeah.
Thank you, Aamer. Some really good examples there. And before we shift into the next section, I would love if you could just quickly, both of you, give me one piece of advice for employers that are looking to get started in adopting safety technology, what one piece of advice would you give them? And Greg, I'm going to have you start.
I think it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, and ensuring that technology is the solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. I think a lot of times we get really excited about a particular technology and we want to go implement it everywhere. And that's not always, the case. So I think it's doing your due diligence, really working through that problem space, understanding is this technology solution really what I'm looking for. I would also like to say that we've talked. I mentioned exoskeletons a little bit, and while they are and do give us quite an advantage on helping to reduce ergonomic specific injuries, it's really not the full solution to the problem that we're experiencing. We really would like to find ways to eliminate that hazard. All we've done is really kind of put in PPE, really to try to protect the mechanic. So, don't stop there. Go ahead and do it. Get it out there. If that's the solution that you need to really impact the hazard that's being exposed to the mechanic, or the worker. But we need to take it to the next step, which is really find ways to eliminate the hazard altogether.
No, that's great advice, Greg. And early on in Work to Zero, we talked about shiny object syndrome. Just because the technology looks really cool doesn't mean it's going to solve your safety issues. So make sure you're always starting with the safety issue first. So thank you for that. And Aamer, any words of advice?
Yeah, my short advice will be start small. So don't try to overdo it, and do a small project, a pilot project, verify that, and then leverage from the platform.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aamer. And I wanted to share a little bit about Work to Zero and some of the resources that you all can get access to if you're looking for some extra information or tools to help you in your innovation journey. And I wanted to talk about digital readiness. Digital technologies really are the future, as many of us know. That's why we're here, right, at EWTS. And they are truly transforming how we protect our workers, how we minimize loss, and increase profitability. And for many organizations, the future is already here. But as I mentioned earlier, not everyone is quite ready to start their innovation journey. So Work to Zero actually partnered with DECRA to create some resources regarding digital readiness. So how to get your organization ready for digital innovation. We are actually releasing these resources this month in October. So you can find them at nsc.org/digital readiness. And I want to talk a bit about our 5 stages of digital readiness. And I'd love if our audience, as I'm walking through these, could think about what stage of readiness their organization is in. And then if you're interested in moving along that readiness to innovate, our resources can give you some tips and advice on how to do that. So 5 stages of digital readiness. The earliest stage, the first stage, is really the observing phase. And this is when the organization is perhaps unsure about the value of innovating, and they might be passively exploring how digital technologies can be used for safety. There might be a lack of digital skill set across the organization, and maybe a lack of trust among the leaders on digital technologies. The second phase after observing is the experimenting phase. In this phase, some proof of concept activities may be taking place. It's usually in conjunction with a specific project that's related to digital application. And most people in the organization can be considered technology bystanders, which means the speed of innovation usually relies very heavily on one person or one individual project outcome. The third phase is the adopting phase. Investments are being made in developing and acquiring the skill sets and relevant technologies. In this phase, there's usually a well-defined purpose for the technology. And safety is communicated, and most people in the organization accept and support the use of safety technologies. In this phase, the organization applies change management principles to nurture and maintain the positive mindsets of those affected by the use of the technology. The fourth phase is the integrating phase. An alignment of digital mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets will exist across the organization. And most of the organization is actively involved in digital safety activities. There is a clear appreciation of the benefits of the technology. Both the organization and the individual recognize the benefits. And in the fifth phase, which is the transforming phase, mature organizations incorporate a digital vision set to establish future safety strategies and really drive new safety innovation. So the digital value for safety and business is constantly and intentionally leveraged to manage the company's risk profile and to expand the scale and the scope of worker engagement and protection. So those are the 5 phases of digital readiness. If you're wondering how to get started on this journey, we have 4 best practices for you all. They are lined out in detail in our digital readiness resources, but we suggest to align with the business value and really articulate the why the new technology is needed. And that gets back to what Greg was talking about earlier. Assess how the technology interacts with and impacts the various users and groups throughout its life cycle. Identify what supporting elements are needed. Do you need to pull in operations, HR, IT, who needs to be involved? And then lastly, clarify expectations, anticipate there's going to be errors, and assess the possible unintended consequences. Sometimes when you're trying to solve for one thing, another thing pops up. It's almost a game of whack-a-mole. So just be aware that there may be unintended consequences. So again, these resources are new for October. You can find them at nsc.org/digital readiness. If you're not familiar with the Work to Zero initiative, we are focused on helping employers adopt technology for fatality prevention. We are a grant-funded initiative. All of our resources are free and available on our website at nsc.org/work-to-zero is where you can find all of our information and resources. And just to give you a preview of what else we have available, we have about 40 pages of web content looking at the top hazardous situations, looking at relevant safety technology solutions. And then we have a ton of resources for you all. We have about 5 reports looking at specific technologies. And then we also have 5 recorded webinar series looking at COVID and technology, looking at immersive technology like augmented and virtual reality. We did a 4-part series that actually Greg joined us on. We have a 4-part series on fatigue-related technologies. We have one on on proximity sensors. And then we just finished up a series looking at the safety application of drones. So again, check those out at nsc.org/work-to-zero. And we will be rolling out new resources all the time. Really heavy through March. We're going to be looking at an implementation pilot and roadmap if you're looking at how to get started. We'll also be releasing a white paper on making the business case for innovation, as well as 8 ROI calculators looking at various technologies. So make sure you look forward to those. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening in today, and we would love to take any questions from the audience.